good afternoon and welcome to this Royal Irish Academy of Music online guest lecture. It is a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Paulo de Assis from the Orpheus Institute in Ghent, who will be presenting a lecture entitled Artistic Research in Music, From Practice to Practice Through Research. Paulo de Assis has developed an international profile as a researcher who combines musical practice as a pianist of the classical repertoire, experimental performer and stage director, musicological expertise on 20th century Western art music, publishing experience as author and editor, and wide-ranging transdisciplinary interests in contemporary philosophy and epistemology. His work over the last 12 years has been devoted to artistic research. He was the principal investigator of the European Research Council project, Experimentation versus Interpretation, Exploring New Paths in Music Performance in the 21st Century, hosted at the Orpheus Institute from 2013 to 2018. He is the founder and chair of the international conference series Deloitte's and Artistic Research, otherwise known as DARE, and is the editor of the book series Artistic Research at Rowman and Littlefield International in London and New York. He is regularly invited for keynote speeches, evaluation committees, review panels, PhD external examinations, masterclasses, concerts, and performances. Paulo is the author of 3 books: Logic of Experimentation, Rethinking Music Performance Through Artistic Research in 2018, Luigi Nono's Vende, 2006, and Domani L'Aurora in 2004. As an editor, he has published 14 volumes, including Artistic Research, Charting a Field in Expansion, 2019, Virtual Works, Actual Things, Essays in Music Ontology in 2018, The Dark Precursor, Deloitte's and Artistic Research in 2017, and Experimental Affinities in Music in 2015, amongst many others. I would like to thank Paulo most sincerely for accepting my invitation to present this lecture. I hope we can welcome you to Ireland in person in the future, but for now we are delighted to have Dr. Paulo de Assis with us today to present this guest lecture entitled Artistic Research in Music, From Practice to Practice Through Research.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you very much for this very detailed presentation. Yes, I have been working on artistic research for a substantial part of my life. I think now officially 14 years, but even before I knew what is artistic research, I was doing artistic research without knowing it. And so indeed, I consider this as one of the big things in my life is my dedication to a kind of practice that is imbued by research, and where research is done from a creative perspective to construct, to build new things. So I think that was very nice in your introduction. That was clearly evident for everybody that that's my kind of take in music and in music research. And for today, what I thought to keep it very simple, because you mentioned I have interest in philosophy, in psychoanalysis, many things, but today I want to keep it quite simple, and I want to convey 2 main messages. So first, I will present you some basic thoughts, how I see artistic research, some very foundational ideas. And then the big part of this presentation, I want to go through one online publication I have, and I want to go through it in very much detail so that you really grasp how I am approaching artistic research. And at the very end, I will tell you a little bit my future plans. So this is my 6 telegrams. This is a kind of preliminary to the real presentation. So I came to these formulations in 6 very simple, direct messages. What means artistic research from my perspective, how I think it can be most fruitful for the community of musicians and researchers. So my first telegram is that artistic research is not research on something. It is not research of something, but it is research for something. A simple explanation. Normally, research is conducted after the fact. Normally, in the humanities, in the arts, you do research once an artist or a group of artists or an epoch produced an output or a number of outputs. And then you have the art historian, you have the musicologist, you have the music theoretician, you have the music philosopher. And all these disciplines, they look to something that already exists in the world and they analyze it. In the sciences, in engineering, in technological sciences, it's the other way around. They are always looking to do something that was not done before. A new machine, a new technology, a new language. So they are oriented towards the future. But research in the humanities has a long tradition of being oriented towards the past, aiming at reinterpreting the past. What I claim is that artistic research allows us in the humanities, in research, in and through the arts, to be constructive, to do research, to generate something new. And this is my second telegram. Something to be invented, something unprecedented, something that does not exist in the world today. And through our research, we will bring it into existence. Something with aesthetic components, aesthetic, yes, because we are dealing with art, we are dealing with emotions, with affects, with emotive responses. But if we are doing research, we must have some kind of epistemic component. There must be something about new knowledge that we are also generating, that we are conveying through our research. And for me, this aesthetic epistemic with an hyphen is a very important concept, because it is a practice, again. It's not anymore doing art for the sake of art, or doing art for politics, or doing art for other purposes, for religious or spiritual purposes, but doing art with aesthetic, but in the sense of producing knowledge, and knowledge that can be argued, that can be discussed. This is what makes artistic research so special and so powerful, in my view. My third telegram: artistic research, in my view, should implement future practices, future knowledge. Even if we are dealing with things from the past, from musics from the past, composers from the past, can be a recent past, can be yesterday past, but we should aim to generate practices, ways of doing that have not been done before. There is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in doing what was done before. I'm only saying that is not artistic research. If you go to a spectacular concert of all Mozart sonatas or Schubert, or etc., it's a wonderful experience. But a future practice is not being generated. It's an old practice, very well curated, can be fascinating. That's not artistic research. That's what I mean. So a generation of future practices. Now, fourth telegram. My fourth telegram, as you already can easily understand from what I said before, artistic research has the potential and should be used, should be applied in order to challenge habits. Habits are, we all have habits and we rely on habits. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to wake up. These are all habits. Many habits are fantastic, we need them to survive, to live. But many habits, especially cultural habits, can be very problematic. And at least to reflect critically about our habits is fundamental, especially if you are doing research. So challenge your own habits permanently, every day question them. challenge expectations, what the others expect from your practice, from your discipline, what is expected from a musician. This, of course, has changed throughout history. And what artistic research enables us is to very consciously and proactively challenge these expectations and challenge traditions. For me, traditions is a very big problem because most traditions have been invented in a specific historical context, most of them, and are misused because they are presented as if they have been here since always, since the origin of time, since Genesis. And all traditions have a birth hour. And we can question them, and we should question them if we can come up with better ways of doing art, better ways of living, better ways of being together as a community. So for me, artistic research also enhances this potential. Again, there are other practices in music that do not share this, and they can be very interesting, but they are not doing artistic research. My fifth telegram relates to the idea of redistributing processes, redistributing practices, activities, responsibilities, which artistic research enables. One example, we were all trained in music schools. Most of you, suppose, are musicians. We had a very clear division: the composer, the performer, the listener, the critic, etc. Today, this makes little sense because we all, sometimes we are a little bit composer, sometimes a little bit a performer, sometimes a listener, sometimes a critic. We are all these functions. We are musicians. I hope we are creative musicians. And this allows a redistribution. We don't need to define ourselves like speech act. I am a composer. We don't need this anymore. Your practices, what you do, will vary. A composer is performing, even in the act of composing. That's a performative act, absolutely. A performer that does not creatively think how to give shape to a piece is not creative. He must be a little bit of a composer, more or less. There's a range, a scale, you can move. But my point is, if you're doing artistic research, you can move between all these old compartmentations and be free. And what defines you is what you are doing in the here and now. For example, when Denise mentioned I am a stage director, I never studied stage direction. From a disciplinary point of view, I am not. But what happened? When I needed for some projects, I will show you some example later on today. I needed to intervene as stage director. And I did it once, I did it twice, 3, 4, I did it a lot of times. I was happy, people were happy. So what I was doing was stage direction. Would I say I am a stage director? I'm more skeptical about that. But what you do is what defines you, not a title in your wall hanging there. So this is very important. And this redistribution of activities, of responsibilities, redistribution of knowledge. Also, artistic research allows us to rethink also the compartmentations of knowledge. And in that sense, of course, I am a very strong proactive believer of transdisciplinarity, because I think we should move between different forms of knowledge production. Should not stay only in one. As artists, if we say we are artists, we must have this freedom. And in artistic research, we can put it into practice. We can wander, we can walk through different disciplines and try things out and explore things more or less according to the current projects we are doing. And of course, at the end of the day, I aim of a redistribution of the sensible. I mean, sensible in a very broad perspective, how we perceive the world, how we perceive each other, how we perceive things, the human, the non-human, how all these things, how we interrelate with them, how we articulate power relations between objects, between humans, non-humans. So in that sense, how we are doing politics from the aesthetic point of view, not politics, parties and wars, etc., but politics in the sense of how we distribute things in the world, which is the noble sense of politics. And this artistic research can help us to do this in a more proactive way. And my last telegram has to do with my self-declared criteria for artistic research. So when I see something, some performance, installation, film, video, whatever, I ask this question. These are my criteria. What about the artistic quality? Is there high artistic quality? So the know-how, the métier, as the French say. So is this person who started, for example, as a photographer, or is this thing is presenting, he or she is presenting, is this photographically well done, well crafted or not? And if not, why? And maybe there's also reasons for not being, but I look at the artistic quality, very important for me. So this means, in my eyes, an artist researcher must be an artist. Other people don't say this. I think so. That's my view. Must be. So that's the first criteria, the artistic quality. The second criteria is what I call the aesthetic criticality. So the capacity to problematize. This means, how is this object, this phenomena that I am receiving, how is this problematizing its own field, problematizing the world, problematizing knowledge, problematizing what we know, what we don't know about a given entity. What is the critical power of this object or emotion, whatever? That's very important, and this is something that has to be worked out in artistic research, the criticality. My third criteria is what I talked about before, the knowledge aspect, the epistemic relevance. Does this phenomena has something of more general interest, or is just a very personal interest? There are a lot of things we do as artists sometimes that is of interest only for us or for 2 or 3 friends. It never gets reached out, never reaches out to a broader community. Of course, most interesting cases, it does. And so I think this must be a criteria also, which has to do with the context and the impact we might have or not. And what is the relevance? I also say this in other words. As an artist researcher, you produce something that, let's say, to give an image, you put it on the table and you leave the room. You, the maker, leaves the room. And without your presence, this object has to speak. If it doesn't speak without your presence, then the epistemic relevance is reduced. So this criteria, for me, is also a very important one. And the last criteria is the discursive articulation. This is what is specific about artistic research, in my understanding. I believe one has to make an argument. Make an argument. So it's the same story. Put an argument on the table, you leave the room, others have to understand the argument. What is your point? It cannot be an opinion. It cannot be a taste, a like or I don't like. It must be an argument that you leave there, and others can, independently of you, they can make their assessment, their choice, their reflections about your argument. So for me, artistic research has one part, which is discursive articulation. For me, is important. For some of my colleagues, is not. For me, it is. And about words, I just want, this would be the 7th telegram, it's not written, but I tell you, is that words, for sure, cannot say everything. We all agree on this. But words can say a lot. And I believe, as an artist researcher, you have to go until the limit with words. You say everything you can say with words. And once you are there, you reach that point, that border, that frontier, that moment, people will believe you, that there is something you cannot tell in words and you'll tell in other means. And then you have a credibility. But if you refuse to use words before you say with words what you can say with words, you are losing credibility. Okay, so this was my kind of introduction. Okay, now I come to the second part, which is a concrete example. This one. So I really thought for you today, what I would be very happy to communicate is a concrete example of what I'm talking about, this from practice to practice through research and taking into account all my telegraphic ideas I just communicated to you. And so what I decided is to go through an online article that I published some years ago already on music by Luigi Nono and more, you will see. And this you can find online in the Journal for Artistic Research, JAR. You probably know the Journal for Artistic Research. This has been published there with this title called Luigi Nono, Unfolding Waves. If you go there, don't go now, because if you go now, we'll block the server. They are in Sweden, it's a bit of a trouble. But I'll show you my screen and follow it here. And later on, you can go on the website. You are totally free to read this article. There are several pages. The article is developed in modules. You can do it. But now what I will offer you is one way of reading this article. Let's say it's one entrance door and how to navigate this article to make my point clear from practice to practice. And so to start, the only thing you have to know before really starting is, I click too much, is that can you see on the left, the content side, the red things? Okay, so this is the structure of the article. So you have 7 modules with an introduction. And these 7 modules, you can read from 1 to 7, or you can read from 3, completely random. And there's no prescribed sequence. And today, as I said, I will do a particular reading of this. So another way of seeing the 7 modules, they have a color. Every module has a color. These are, because it's about a Venetian composer, and these were the 7. I'll show you in a little smaller detail. These 7 colors were the 7 colors that were allowed for painters in the 15th century in Venice. Imagine only these 7 colors. With this, Bernini and Bellini, they did all their paintings. This was the allowed colors. So we decided to take these 7 colors as a visualization of the 7 modules. And I will today start by module number 5, the yellow, the egg yellow module. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we are. And so what we have here, module 5, we have a pianist, which in this case is me, and the pianist playing a piece of music by a contemporary, those days, contemporary composer, Luigi Nono. And this was really my starting point. All my relation with this piece, with this composer, started me as a young piano student, learning this piece, very complex, very difficult, and with a tape, so very awkward thing those days. And this pianist, we can play a little bit, let's see, you get some? We can leave it as a little background there for time. And as a pianist, you please tell me if the sound is complicating your understanding. I stop the music. This pianist, so you have to understand, this is really a very simple practice, a piano performer, a piano player, learning a piano piece. This is how it starts, from practice, absolute practice. At this stage, I had the score, so I didn't need to know who is Luigi Nono, what was his philosophy, aesthetics. I was not obliged to know that. I just played the score, played the music, and I have an execution of the piece. And this is where it started. But then, what you have here in this module, you have 2 recordings of the same piece. So you have this one we were listening to, and go to the beginning. And you have another recording of the same piece, by the same pianist. I will tell you, because you would require, of course, very good loudspeakers. The simple difference is that the tape is more present in one record than in the other. And it makes two very different sonic walls. And this became for me a problem, because nowhere in the score could I see how different should be the balance between piano and tape. So I started a reflection. What is this situation? Me as a pianist start this reflection. So I went to another level, analytical level. Still as a pianist with, okay, some analytical tools. And I started watching, observing, synthesizing what is in the piano. So you see on the left side, a reduction of the piano pitches for every section of the piece. And on the right side, tape. So a reduction of the pitches, the dominant pitches on the tape. So I started thinking, and then you have piano and tape on the third column, where you have a kind of the two in a score, kind of the reduction in a score, so that I could start understanding the complex relations between piano and tape. So you have already a very reflexive moment here. You start going into the analysis of the piece, but still music analysis. I would not call it artistic research still. And the next stage, when I got into this and was playing the piece a lot and I was confident and I knew the piece, I wanted and I needed to know more. So at some point, I really wanted to know more from the history of the piece. And so this pianist, music analyst, here becomes a musicologist. Yeah? And this person is making a research on the history of the piece, when the piece was composed, for which pianists, in which studio, how was it composed, recorded, how was this? And so you have a musicological essay, not very long in this case, but could be an article. So you have here the musicologist putting into words a lot of information to consolidate the knowledge that was possible to have at this time. So you have Luigi Nono, you have Maurizio Pollini, you have Claudio Abbado in the photograph. They're all very important for this piece. This piece is written for Pollini. The piece is dedicated to the wife of Pollini. Abbado was a common friend. They had made a lot of music together. So I'm writing all these things. In the little box, I'm providing very factual information about the piece, the kind of catalog information about the piece. So this is the musicological part. But then, to do this, I went to an archive. I lived for a period of my life in Venice, and I went every day to the archive Luigi Nono in Venice. And in this archive, that's another module of the article. In this archive, I have to do archaeology. Very important word for me and for us, I think, archaeological research. Because the moment you enter an archive of a composer, you have infinite layers of materials. And not now, but if you are interested, there are these two videos here, this folding video. This one, I recommend that you watch it.
So one of the fundamental ideas behind the project Music Experiment 21 has to do with the fact that we do not consider.
In this video, I show the kinds of materials that I was able to see in this archive. And that allowed me, this was a very crucial experience for me, allowed me to see that the musical work is made of infinite component particles. Sketches, drafts, recordings. Then you have the tape. So you have working recordings of Pollini playing just one pitch, two pitches, a chord, recording, combining, mixing. You have all that in the archive. You have recordings of the piece after it was released, so from different performers. All this material is available there. You have different editions of the piece. So for me, this was a crucial moment because it really opened a new understanding of what are musical works, which is something I developed in my book, Logic of Experimentation. Denise mentioned, I mentioned there's one chapter about the new image of work, which is very much assemblage idea of works, an assemblage of all these infinite materials. So in these two videos, in this module, I explain what kind of materials you have from the past. But in the second video, part 2, unfolding, I show you what you can creatively do with these materials. And for the sake of time, I will jump to what you can do. Okay, this is a very analytical thing. I leave it to you when you have time to delve into this. It's an extended analysis. I would call it extended analysis of a piece because it's based on the sketches a lot. So not only the score, but the sketches. But what this all allowed me at some point was to come to this situation where with all the information I had and with my epistemic curiosity and the will to do new things and new practices, I could not stop myself from doing a version of this piece for orchestra. And so this is, I'm entering here a more explicitly creative moment. And so what I did was the piano score, piano part, I orchestrate for an orchestra on stage. And what was the tape, I translated into sonic instruments in 3 groups around the audience. And so there are 2 scores, 2 conductors, 2 entities playing together at the same time. And I explain in this module all my work towards this production of this new piece, if you want, transformed piece, where you have, again, a kind of musicological, again, I put into words what I can. And what I cannot put in words, I put in the score. Yes, and then you have a score. But I did the work to put into words as much as I could. So you have a kind of musicology of the future, because I'm writing about what I am going to do in terms of composition. And then you have the composition, you have the integration in the scheme, in the concert hall in Cologne, in Germany, how this was placed. You have some photos and videos. You have also here a video of the rehearsals with the orchestra of Cologne.
Because this here is front. This is front. So
I have more head.
left should be there. That's better.
You see the orchestra there, they are playing the piano part. I can make it. These are the groups, I'm talking to the groups here. And the conductors have to coordinate the 2 of them. These are all materials that, if you are curious, you can watch later on. These videos are short. I kept them 3-4 minutes, I think 5 maximum. So it's short, you can see it. And then my last module is the final score, the complete final score. And the final on the left here is the recording. By the way, you can also find on the CD, this recording has been published by Kairos, Vienna. So you have, and my score, you have a PDF here, you can download. As I was saying before the meeting started to Denise, I'm a believer in open source, open science, open data. We don't have anything to hide. We are a community. The planet is too small to be hiding things. You know, we are not big enough to hide. So show, communicate, exchange, I'm all in favor. So you have the PDF if you're curious. The only thing I can say from the compositional point of view, in this score, you find a very strange combination of Luigi Nono, Stockhausen, and Helmut Lachermann. You find techniques of writing, of notating, of sound production from these 3 composers, mainly. You can read also the program notes where I explain all this in more detail. And so, to conclude, as you see, I came at the end of all the research, I came to practice again. I came to kind of practice a piece, a work. So from practice to practice. This is one example. There are many other examples. You put it the other way around. You could start from an orchestral piece, come to a piano piece. You could start from a musicological essay and come to other things. There's no prescribed route. But what I mean is be open and be creative. And in my view, as an artist researcher, avoid to stay stuck in your originating discipline as a clarinet player, a viola player, a piano player, a composer. a sound technician. No, move beyond yourself. Challenge yourself. Challenge your own habits. Challenge yourself every day, and the results will be incredible. And we can contribute really to make new worlds. And this, I am a believer that tomorrow can be better than today. I believe, because we can do it, and with good sense and in communion all together, we can do great things. And unfortunately, right now, we don't have the best example of this going on, but let's not talk about that. We're here talking about art and civilization, and we can indeed do it. I'm a believer in this. So this was the example, and as time is really approaching the end, I cannot, I want to show you something more, which is my future plans. And my future plans are this. And this is really just, I show you a window. I am just starting in these days, as we are talking, this week, a new research group. We will be doing research on hypermusic, geomusic, so geolocated music. Hypermusic is music that is multiple components, not only multimedia, also musical. We can explain this in another day. Hypermusic, geomusic, algorithmic composition, so generative music, and I think very crucially, blockchain. And if you go on the Orpheus website, you can find already this text there. So it's a very starting, we are starting this week. And what we are going to do in 2 months is a first seminar, this one, for which you are all very warmly invited. You can participate as active or just passive, just as an attendee. You can just listen to the seminar, which has to do with music NFTs. You probably already heard about this word, NFT. We explain also in our call, but basically we are looking for creative potentials of the blockchain and blockchain networks for artistic research. And the premise is very simple. We live in a completely digitized world. So we are, in that sense, in a post-digital era, because everything has been digitized, or almost everything. Our activity as artists, musicians, performer, composer, etc., what we do is digitized. You all have your compositions or your performances in any form of digital media, I'm sure. And so the question is how to behave in this post-digital era. We cannot go back to 19th century and say, here is the CD. This is old, this is very old format. I have the CD, but it relates to a real piece that you can hear in a real concert. No, much more interesting is, okay, you have this digital object, what can you do with it in a digital ecosystem? And this is what we are now starting to implement. And I think blockchain networks offer incredible opportunities. Again, there will be misuses, but I believe in the good uses. And this seminar aims at exploring what can be these good uses of blockchain for artistic research. You can also find this on the Orpheus website. We have fantastic keynote speakers from the Imperial College, from the University of Zurich, from Dublin, Rachel O'Dwyer from your National College of Art and Design, so a national from you. We have incredible people, and the call has been launched like last week, so this is very fresh, and I really wanted to share with you, because I hope I can excite you about this blockchain and about MetaMusic X. And please, if you have any ideas about this, send a proposal to the seminar or just come and listen, and let's keep in touch.